Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to my book playlist, where in this video we are going through the book titled Three Magic Words by U.S. Andersen. We are now in chapter 3. That's where we're approaching chapter 3, the mind. Before I get into that, I want to give a quick recap and also welcome you if you are new to this channel and found us here at this video. Welcome, welcome. I invite you to visit my book playlist where you can access the previous chapter. And to our subscribers, welcome back. I hope you like this book. I really love this book. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just give my highlights. Was really interesting how this author talked about God, talked about evil, talked about good, and the way that I interpreted it. In essence, God is being described as all good, and because God is all good, it means that he cannot be evil. In that sense, then, the explanation of good and evil are constructs of the human being. Because Source, God, the Creator, however you want to describe it, is just that. It creates without bias. It has no label for what is good and for what is evil. We, the human beings, given the gift of free will, are given that ability through thought, word, and deed to create as we wish, whether it be evil or good, keeping in mind that human beings are endowed with the spark of God. So within each one of us is God's divine light. Now, many of us, such as I, have asked myself, why am I here? And I'm not sure if the author will address that. But I do believe that this essence of God is willing and wanting to express itself through each one of us. Imagine you being an ether, and you can't do anything unless you're in a physical plane to begin to mold that clay into something. And then through that, through identifying the beauty and the love and this incredible wisdom, then we begin to create beauty around us. And you get to see manifest that which is captured in the ether. And now you get to experience it in the flesh. So that's a little bit deep, but I'm not sure if that's something that the author wanted to drive at, but the way I see it. So then, as we're having this God experience as humans here, we are placed in the limitation of the environment of this physical plane. And hence, the mind itself, this subconscious, this God mind, is by design as a protector to limit the portal of all its knowledge. I can explain this is since I've been a parent and I've been in positions of leadership, and you're trying to guide someone that is new to something, but you can't give them everything at once because then they can't process the basic because there's just too much to remember. So that is what it is, in my opinion, to be a human being trapped in this body, but having access, if we wish, to the portal of infinite knowledge. I mean, if you speak with any psychiatrist or have read any journals, there's an understanding that something happens to past knowledge. It's like we compartmentalize it. Sometimes we forget about it, or there's trauma and we somehow block it. Yet, under hypnosis, we remember everything. And additionally, there are those psychiatrists that have placed people under hypnosis, and they start revealing things that appear to be in the future or some past life. So very interesting indeed. We have yet to explore the vastness of the human mind, and that is literally, in my opinion, the greatest frontier. The other section that I'd like to just share my insights about was the section titled Man-Made Law versus Spiritual Law. I'm telling you, this last chapter, Illusion, was really good. And the concept here, the way that I see it, and the best way for me to use a personal example was when I was in law enforcement, when I was a deputy sheriff. It's the idea that you can't be exempt from the law because you don't know it. The law is there for all of us, And of course, sometimes by breaking the law is when we realize, oh, I didn't know that was a law to break. So many of us, that's how we learn, the hard way. Of course, there is that sense of right and wrong, that moral code that we have. And then the spiritual laws. And I was sharing this as a conversation with my brother. And the same thing applies. Just because we don't understand all the spiritual laws, such as the law of cause and effect, and the law of correspondence, the law of attraction, and others, they're at play. They're at play whether we are aware of them or not. They are happening in our lives. We can, once we understand them, look back at our lives and say, oh my goodness, that happened and I caused it and here I am because of it. Interesting, right? So the same thing here with those spiritual laws. And the more that we become aware, the more that we choose to search what are these laws, then we can begin to understand and flow with the spiritual laws in awareness as we seek truth and witness truth in our very own lives. Yeah. Well, my dear one, that's where I'm going to stop right here. There are so many other things I'd love to keep talking about the different sections because they are just worthy of conversation. And I would love for you to enter your comments. Let me know which one of the topics you enjoyed the most from the previous chapter. With no further delay, I will go ahead and jump into this next chapter titled The Mind. Miracle of ages, master of all. O mind that ever must be, hark to the sound of thy Father's call, to the throne and the crown that waiteth for thee. How accustomed we are to regarding mind objectively, how conditioned we are to thinking of mind as brain, an isolated accumulation of gray protoplasm 2 inches behind our foreheads. We give our approval to scientific techniques which trace out brain convolutions and nerve networks and tell us of the storage compartments of memory, the cellular seat of reason, the pulpy mass that gives rise to imagination, the spinal network of conditioned responses. These, we say, are mind. These arrangements of matter which we generally investigate in dead persons or in partially inanimate ones. Yet how far from truth this is. No one has ascertained the quality and quantity of I by investigating nerve tissue under a microscope. The impact and mystery of self-consciousness, the personal I am, has never yielded its secret to the surgeon's knife or the biologist's probings. To objectively state that the body has a nerve center called brain does not bring man one step closer to an understanding of his own self-existence. A thing of such stuff as dreams are made, of which brain and nerve and tissue are but a result and nerve a cause. In this chapter, we shall turn from such half-truths into world of personal consciousness, dealing with mind as divorced from the material, as pure thought and conception, as existing on the spiritual plane of cause and effect. In this manner, we shall arrive at unity, the point where all things are one thing, and thought is the only mover, the creator of everything. The instrument of survival. We must first deal with the conscious mind and its so-called compartments of memory, reason, and imagination. This conscious mind of ours exists at the level of the 5 senses and is quite logically a product of hearing, seeing, smelling, feeling, and tasting. Its pursuit is to satisfy each of these 5 senses with sensations which provide pleasure instead of pain. Each of us can remember the beginning of his conscious mind, perhaps at a few months of age, perhaps at only a few days of age. But the memory is there and available for recall, and is invariably the recall of sensation, the pleasure or pain of one or more of the 5 senses. The conscious mind, therefore, is a pleasure and pain distinguisher, and its compartments of memory, reason, and imagination are but names given to its total instinct to find pleasure and avoid pain. All conscious organisms are endowed with the life urge to survive, and this life urge manifests itself in each as a conscious intelligence best adapted to cope with its surroundings. This survival instinct must necessarily be based on a pleasure-pain principle, for pleasure is an assurance of survival, while pain is a warning of destruction. The system of warnings and assurances set up in each creature is that which we call conscious mind, and has its focal seat in the brain and its network of nerves. On the survival plane, the conscious intelligence of the amoeba is suited to the surroundings of the amoeba. The conscious intelligence of the fish is suited to the surroundings of the fish. The conscious intelligence of the jungle cat is suited to the surroundings of the jungle cat. And when it is not, the conscious intelligence changes, and so does the creature. For the experience of pain brings forth the desire to avoid pain, and the desire to avoid pain brings forth an image to escape it. And this image is projected into the creative universal mind, which manifests new form and new conscious intelligence to this life that seeks to cope with its surroundings. Thus with all evolution, thus with all adaptation, thus with all of life in whatever form, for form is only temporary, a projection of conscious desire, inescapably the result of thought. Functions of the conscious mind. The conscious mind of man, then, remembers the circumstances which produce pain and pleasure, analyzes from experience which may produce pain and pleasure, imagines a flight into pleasure and escape from pain, and herein lie the compartments of memory, reason, and imagination. Therefore, the conscious mind is a recording, analyzing, and selective instrument for sensation. As an instrument of sensation, the conscious mind is finite. A thing of this world, a thing of the senses, a structural part of a working organism without use or purpose once that organism has ceased to be. The conscious mind, then, must be as destructible as the body which houses it. And we concern ourselves with it here only because it is our means of contact with our true selves, and we need to understand what its function and limitations are. Primarily, the conscious mind is a recorder, an analyzer, and a filer. It records sensation at the level of pain and pleasure. It analyzes the sensation according to circumstances which caused it, and it files such sensation away under one of two main compartments headed Recall about pain and Recall about pleasure. Now, of itself, the conscious mind has no memory. In other words, it does not contain a storehouse in which is laid up all experience and sensation. The faculty of memory as applied to the conscious mind is simply its ability to recall certain experiences and conclusions which have been recorded in the subconscious mind. For the memory of the subconscious mind is perfect. Every thought of the conscious mind has been indelibly recorded in the subconscious, as well as every sensory perception of the individual. The great mass of this material is forever lost to the recall of the conscious mind, for it can only be so recalled when it has previously been filed away with instructions to the subconscious mind to release it for recall. Beneath the level of consciousness. Thus, it can be seen that subconscious memory contains a vast store of material, premises, conclusions, and perceptions that exist without the knowledge of the conscious mind. This vast store of knowledge beneath the level of consciousness affords a great portion of the latent power in each individual person. For could you this moment but recall all this knowledge perfectly, your efficiency and wisdom as an individual would be increased 1,000-fold. These subconscious memories, which exist beyond conscious recall, are neither a plus nor minus factor in the circumstances surrounding any person. Since the conscious mind has never attached importance to them, has never arrived at conviction concerning them, they do not move the subconscious mind to creation, but simply exist, a huge smattering of experience and knowledge lying dormant. But there lies in the subconscious mind convictions, which have been filed away by the conscious mind with the express order never to be available for recall. The prompters. Here in these pain rejections, these conclusions which the conscious mind could not bear to tolerate, these images of conviction which have been buried from sight, we find our illusory devil truly at work. For the nature of the universal intelligence is that it responds to conviction, and the prompters move the subconscious mind to those very things which the individual fears. The conscious mind, the pain-pleasure recorder and analyzer of individual existence, is but an infinitesimal part of a gigantic whole, the entire power and wisdom of which are within the reach of every intelligent person. In order for us to truly grasp the significance of the relationship between man and the universal subconscious mind, we must start at the beginning, an arbitrary and assumed point, for there is no beginning to infinity, just as there is no conclusion. The eternal substance. In the beginning, the Word, does not imply that the beginning of the universal mind was a result of the Word, but rather the beginning of our physical universe as we know it today. Indisputably, there must have been a beginning of the physical universe. Undoubtedly, there will be an end. But on the plane of universal mind, we will find no such beginning and no such end. Our attempt to find a starting place for creation is simply an attempt to place ourselves in space and time at a point where our physical universe, as we know it, did not exist. But this, on no account, should be considered to be a beginning of all things, for the universal mind is infinite in time and space and substance. It has only been very lately that our probings at the elemental substances of nature have yielded us the knowledge that mass and density are purely relative. The astounding discovery of science that there is no such thing as a solid mass has revised the thinking of the entire world. Even as you read this and consider that the chair upon which you are now sitting is simply a collection of particles which are moving about with the rapidity of express trains, your very credulity is threatened. When you consider further that there is 1,000 times more free space between each of those particles than there is mass in the particles themselves, you are seized with the uncomfortable sensation that you are sitting on nothing. Now, if you will hold this thought for a moment and consider that your own body is similarly made up of a collection of free-moving particles widely separated by space and moving about in frenzied agitation, then of a sudden you will see the affinity between the chair and yourself. You are both made of the same substance, which is simply a collection of the only substance there is, and the only difference between you and the chair are of form and consciousness. The atomic theory. Not so long ago, science entertained a premise that certain elements were basic in nature and could not be broken down into other substances. This theory held that base metals such as lead, copper, zinc, and iron were eternal substances in the scheme of things for the reason that each of the atoms of which they were composed weighed so much on a scale of relativity. For some time this theory propounded that elements on the atomic weight scale were the substance from which all things were made. It was difficult for scientists to account for conscious life with this theory, but they seem to have arrived at some sort of beginning, and so they adopted it and proceeded from there. It seemed logical to assume that the smallest basic unit of mass and energy had been discovered in the atom, especially since all the atoms of a basic element had the same characteristics. Previously, the molecule had been a suspect as the smallest unit of matter or energy, but with the discovery and statistical classification of the atom, a new era was ushered in. It followed very shortly, however, that scientists discovered that even the atom was composed of other whirling particles, almost a small universe in which the two principal components were called the electron and the proton. Speculation began as to whether protons and electrons might be freed of the confines of the atom, and one summer's day over Japan, the final result of such speculation bore its fruit. We shall not concern ourselves with the moral implication of science's greatest discovery being used on the battlefields of war, but rather with where we are going now that the elemental theory of atomic weights no longer give us convenient classifications of basic substances in nature. For when the atom is split, the element disintegrates, and the question is, what happens to it? Mass and energy are one. Thus far, we have only been able to say in general terms that mass is potential energy and energy is potential mass. That a certain weight of uranium, for example, is capable of unleashing a certain amount of power, and that a certain amount of power is capable of creating a certain amount of uranium. And the only possible further conclusion, based on pure scientific research, is that there is only one substance from which everything physical is made, and there's only one substance from which all energy is made, and this energy, or substance, is infinite in time and space. It has no beginning and no end, and thus is everywhere at all times, and all of it is anywhere at any time. This may be proved to be a substantial dose to digest, but if you are going to throw off the shackles of limited thinking, you must strive to free yourself from conceptions of form, mass, space, and time as ultimate reality. You must say to yourself that you know that the physical world as you see it could not possibly answer the question of your own existence. So the answer must be elsewhere. You must reach into the furthermost recesses of your mind, for the answer is there, and only there, and never in the physical world around you. We now know that matter and energy are one, that there is only one substance or energy or intelligence in all things. Since in its pure form we can recognize this energy as nothing but invisible power, unintelligible to our five senses, there is not the slightest valid reason to assume that it is anything else than constant and never changing in its basic nature, that it always has been and always will be. In other words, that it is infinite. Unity. Now there can be no space or time in anything that is infinite. Infinity has no beginning and no end, and there are no units within it. Infinity is one and only one. If you divide infinity into a series of units, you no longer have infinity, but multiplicity instead. Since there are no units within infinity, nothing can be moved from one point to another, and since time is a measure of the movement of a unit through space, there is no time in infinity. Now what we are saying is essentially this. Everything is basically one thing, has no beginning and no end, has no past and no future, but only one eternal now. Einstein has said that since a mass traveling at the speed of light would appear to be everywhere at the same time, the speed of light represents infinity. This premise is a small part of the master mathematician's theory of relativity, which he has stated came to him as an intuition or revelation. The entire theory was years in the proving by a group of highly trained mathematicians working night and day, and even now there is room for doubt that it is exact. So difficult it is to cope with infinity with finite tools and measurements. Yet few, if any, doubt the basic truth of the theory of relativity today. It is obvious that anything actually traveling infinitely fast would be everywhere at the same time, which could only be one time or all time. And all of whatever was traveling at that speed would be at any particular point, and all of it would be everywhere at all points. Infinity and God. Infinity is a difficult word. Since words are attempts to convey thoughts, the word infinity has come to cover a multitude of so-called unknowables. Today, many people popularly use the word to cover anything that goes beyond their understanding. But it actually is as exact a conception as anything could possibly be. Very probably the most exact conception mankind has ever been able to draw. Infinity is the word that science has substituted for God. This is not to assign to science an irreverent attitude, for scientists, as a group of men, are the most reverent in creation. Scientists simply cannot work with an unknowable, and religion says that God cannot be known. Infinity, says science, is that oneness behind all creation that can be known, thus the natural substitution of words. But of course, we are not talking about two different things at all. God is one, infinity is one. God is everywhere, infinity is everywhere. God is an everlasting now, infinity is an everlasting now. God knows everything, infinity contains everything. Religion, biology, botany, chemistry, electronics, physics, and all science, all philosophy, all the thinking efforts of man are but different roads which lead to one common destination. Infinity or God, whichever you will. Infinity or God, eternal substance, eternal intelligence, that thing which is everything and yet is but one thing, that thing which is everywhere and yet is in but one place, that thing which is all time and yet is but one time, that thing which is all form and yet is but one form. Infinite, eternal, only one, and never changing, that to which all things are known and in which every physical object has its being. This is God, and all of God is in us this moment, right now, and all the moments to come. The Grand Conception. If we have lost you now, it is only because your conception of the final reality of the physical world is so strong that for the moment it will not dissolve before your efforts to free your mind. If you are floundering, wondering whether this is a dream or substance, fact or fiction, simply keep your resolve and your faith. You could scarcely learn to speak a new language in several months, and this language transcends all others. Be assured of this. All the mystery and complexity will disappear. As you continue to study and meditate, you will one day read again the portions of this book which seemed complex and will be amazed at how fundamental and simple they seem to you. For you are gathering from each chapter far more than you know, coming closer to an understanding of your true self, breaking down the finite bounds in your thinking, undergoing an expansion in power and conception that you may as yet be unaware of. Yet you can be sure that when the last chapter reveals the metaphysical secret, which is so simple and yet so difficult to grasp, there will be a meaning and power in everything that you have read in these pages. So let us stand for the moment on the conclusion that there is but one power behind the entire universe, which is everywhere at all times and is the substance from which all things are made. In the next chapter, we shall cover in detail how form is called into being through and by this power. But for now, it is enough to know that the same infinite intelligence pervades all life, all vegetable and animal life, and even every inanimate object of our world. This infinite intelligence, then, is the only mind there is. We are all using it. We can't help using it, for it is one and everywhere and is the stuff from which all things are made. It is as different from the human brain as night is from the day. For the human brain is a specific instrument for a specific organism for specific surroundings, while the intelligence behind all creation cannot by itself be specific in either time or place, form or circumstance. Being eternal and unified, it does not recognize these things except as projections of the consciousness that exist within it. One mind only, which is everywhere and everything, this is the subconscious mind, and now, today, we are able to see it and to experiment with it. Hypnosis exposes the subconscious. First and most important of the tools with which we are able to reach the subconscious is hypnotism, for through the techniques of this science, we are able to temporarily put the conscious mind out of the way and deal directly with God power, the infinite intelligence in every man, the subconscious mind. And the very startling discovery we make immediately is that this subconscious mind reacts entirely by suggestion. In other words, it has no volition of its own. It does not by itself make choices, indulge in arguments, postulate theories, search for answers, wonder at possibilities. It only accepts and acts. Once it is given a suggestion, it immediately sets to work to make that suggestion truth, for it accepts that suggestion completely. Now, the unfortunate thing about hypnotism is that its evolution has been such that people tend to regard it as a type of trickery. Those of you who have seen hypnotists work may have been witness to a series of trivia, which, even though it has perhaps confounded you, has nevertheless left you with feelings of charlatanism, or even worse, an attitude of "so what?" You may have seen a man act as if he were a bear, shiver with cold even though the temperature was normal, break into a sweat in the same normal temperature. You may have seen a man put into a cataleptic state in which his limbs became rigid and he resisted great forces or held great weights. Or you may have seen a person unable to resist post-hypnotic suggestion by reciting certain poetry on a word cue, picking up a certain object as a result of a gesture, or performing any one of a dozen other pointless acts. Without doubt, the stage hypnotist, with his theatrics and flair for the bizarre, has planted in the minds of his public a definite bar against regarding hypnotism as an experimental science. What few people have suspected over the years is that the subconscious mind not only accepts suggestion as truth, but it has the capacity to make literal truth out of such suggestion. For example, by the simple device of telling a patient under deep hypnosis that he has no feeling in his arm, we are able to effect this condition so completely that his arm may be amputated without anesthetic and he will undergo no pain whatever. And moreover, such a patient can be told that when he is awake, all he will have to do is to displace all feeling in any part of his body. Simply say, "The feeling is going away." The day is not too far distant when each person will carry his own anesthetic with him in the form of this simple phrase. Consider how much suffering will be saved during accidents, disasters, and wars when an injured person can immediately allay his pain by simply saying, "The feeling is going away." With isolated individuals, such a situation has already become a reality in clinical tests. The cure and prevention of disease may reach undreamed of perfection under the proper use of hypnosis. Cures as startling as those performed by Jesus himself are now being effected by those few who have perfected hypnotism's techniques. A young lad who from birth had been afflicted by a hideous malformity of the skin, a thick crustaceous development called elephant hide, and for whom medical science could do nothing, has now a normal skin through hypnosis. How? By the simple expedient of telling him, when his conscious mind was out of the way, that his skin was clearing up. The subconscious mind is everything, contains everything, knows everything, and therefore can do anything. All it needs is the suggestion. All matter, all substance, all knowledge exists within it, and it rearranges them according to suggestion. And hypnotism is the first concrete way in which man has been able to reveal and study the working of this mind. Limitations of hypnosis. Now, if hypnosis can accomplish the cure of disease and the anesthetizing of the body, it is reasonable to ask, why is it not more widely used? The answer is that it is coming to be. But so shrouded in superstition and ill repute is this science, so fraught with misunderstanding and malpractice, that scientific minds have been reluctant to put it to wide usage. More than that, the scientific studies of the subconscious mind have revealed an instrument of such astounding power that scientists have hesitated to reveal anything of that about which they know so little. Nevertheless, hypnotism is coming into increasingly popular use in medicine. Now, where does the power of this subconscious mind cease? If you tell a sick man's subconscious that he is well and he becomes well, if you tell an injured man's subconscious that he feels no pain and he feels none, does this perhaps mean that you can tell an unsuccessful man that he is successful and he will become successful? It most certainly does. Given the proper suggestion, the subconscious mind will manifest success from failure, health from disease, prosperity from poverty, friendship and love from loneliness and isolation. For nothing is impossible to the subconscious mind, and it operates entirely by suggestion. From the foregoing, it would appear at first glance that the only thing the world needs to cure its ills is to have one wise and kindly hypnotist put everyone into a trance and then inform them that they are healthy, prosperous, successful, and loved, and presto, the millennium is here. Ridiculous as this may sound, if such a sufficiently enlightened and trustworthy person could be found and some method of effecting the hypnosis could be developed, the millennium indeed would be dawning. But the techniques of hypnotism are a far cry from this development today. Thus far, it has been fairly conclusively proven that with the present techniques of hypnosis, only about 1 out of 5 people can be hypnotized. More than that, a hypnotic suggestion once planted in the subconscious will eventually dissipate itself if it is not renewed. So that a hypnotized person who is told that he is recovering from a disease will show a definite improvement for a few weeks, but if the hypnosis is not repeated and the suggestion replanted, he will soon relapse to his former state. Why? Simply because his mind contains a conditioned response, the prompter, which is making him sick. A new conditioned response prompting him to be well has been planted, but this new seed must be watered and tended in order for it to grow. The old seed, the prompter, is a flourishing weed, and his conditioned response, you are sick, must be overcome and disintegrated. But regardless of insufficient techniques, hypnotism has revealed beyond all doubt that there is in man a mind with an infinite creative power, and that this mind responds entirely to suggestion. Techniques of hypnosis. Now you may ask, Why is it that a perfect stranger can tell your subconscious when you are under hypnosis that you have no feeling in your arm, and forthwith you have no feeling in your arm? While if you, yourself, in a normally conscious state, say that you have no feeling in your arm, the feeling is just lively as ever. You are not able to accomplish this cessation of feeling because you think as well as speak. You are not simply telling your subconscious that you have no feeling in your arm. You are forming the words in your mind or speaking them aloud, but this thought is accompanied by a dozen others, such as, "This is silly. I know it won't work. This, of course, is impossible. I have normal feeling in my arm because I am aware of feeling now." In other words, you are so accustomed yourself to having feeling in your right arm that even when you say, "I have no feeling in my arm," a dozen others of your own thoughts are directed to your subconscious to assure that you still actually have feeling there. There is positively no other explanation for the fact that the hypnotist can accomplish what you can't. The very primary fact that he must put your conscious mind out of the way is all the proof we need. The conscious mind then, being asleep, cannot say don't, or it isn't possible. The conscious mind can do nothing, and the subconscious mind seizes on the suggestion of the hypnotist and attempts to turn it into truth. The very techniques of hypnosis illustrate this point. The hypnotist begins by having the subject get into a comfortable position. Why? Because he knows that the conscious mind of the subject must go to sleep. He then begins to talk sleep to the subject. To facilitate this, he may ask the subject to concentrate his sight on some object, such as the tip of the hypnotist's finger or his eyes or any object in the room. The purpose of this is to incite a tiredness in the eye muscles of the subject and thus promote a sleepy feeling. Patiently, the hypnotist talks to the subject about how his eyes are becoming tired. He may continue on this vein for 5 minutes, fully aware of how repetitious he is, for he knows that repetition is essential, that only through constant reiteration will he plant the seed in the subconscious mind. After a while, the hypnotist may begin to talk of how the eyelids of the subject are closing, how heavy they are getting, how it is impossible to hold them open any longer. When he sees that the subject's eyes are drooping and heavy-lidded, he may say, "You cannot hold your eyes open any longer." If at this juncture the eyes close, the patient is well on his way. The hypnotist now talks of how tired the patient is, how much he feels like sleeping, how delightful it is to sleep soundly. Once the subject is in a state of deep sleep, the hypnotist may simply leave him there for a while and then awaken him, confident that the next hypnotic effort will be accomplished with much greater simplicity and that the patient will go into an even deeper sleep. The deepest sleep possible on the part of the subject is what the hypnotist strives for, because he knows that in order to get directly at the subconscious mind, he must have the subject's conscious mind thoroughly out of the way. Once deep hypnotic sleep has been induced in the patient, suggestion of health, prosperity, etc. can be given his subconscious, and they will tend to be manifested in the physical world. It is true that these new conditions may revert to their former states if hypnotic suggestion is not persisted in, but that is simply because negative habits of thinking, long ingrained in the subject's conscious mind, and the buried pain remembrances, the prompters, will eventually displace the hypnotist's suggestion if they are not firmly implanted. But the astounding fact is this. Here at last we see pure God power, the infinite, the mighty subconscious mind at work, for it creates according to the pure word or thought and is the single power in all creation. Thought transference reveals one mind. Now, this subconscious mind belongs to no one man alone, for in it and through it all things live and have their beings. Since it is infinite, it is indivisible, and therefore irrevocably one, and that all life is tied together by an invisible but powerful bond. The principal experimental method and tool with which we may grasp this is thought transference. Second, and nearly as important, is intuition. Thought transference is that phenomenon whereby one person may grasp another person's thought without any apparent means of communication. Experiments along these lines have been conducted for many years, more recently under the surveillance of trained scientific minds, and the occurrence of phenomena is indisputable. Original tests put subjects in different parts of the same building, one to transmit the picture of a simple drawing, the other to attempt to capture this picture and draw it with pencil on paper. Though results were far from perfect, they far exceeded any possibility of pure chance or coincidence, and even where the receiving subject was obviously in error, there was generally sufficient resemblance in his drawing to that of the picture held by the transmitting subject as to assure that a certain rapport had been actually established between the minds of these people. Separating these subjects by miles, continents, and oceans has made no difference in the percentage of successes against failures. Thought transference exists. That the human mind does not grasp it perfectly is only testimony to the fact that the conscious mind has imperfect contact with the universal subconscious mind. It is as simple for thought transference to take place across 3,000 miles of ocean as it is for it to span several feet of space, for the universal subconscious mind exists in only one place, which is all places, and there can be no distances or space within it. Intuition reveals an all-knowing mind. Intuition is that aspect of mental power which enables a person to contact certain aspects of the subconscious mind with ease. In most cases, this phenomenon might be summed up as an intuitive grasp of universal law. Mathematical prodigies are cases in point. Ask such a one for the cube root of 21,952,000 and he answers immediately with 280. He does not stop to figure this, to factor, to add, to subtract, to multiply, to carry. The answer is apparent to him. It is apparent because he sees the law and the law automatically yields the answer. There is nothing mystical or occult about this. Since the universal subconscious mind knows everything, it does not figure out anything. The answer is synonymous with the question. Intuitively, the mathematical prodigy is in contact with the subconscious mind, and he sees immediately, with the posing of the problem, exactly what the answer is. Musical prodigies are similarly intuitive. Music follows the same universal law as mathematics, a fact that may be difficult to assimilate for some of you mathematicians who can't sing a note, some of you musicians to whom a problem in short division poses its own brand of terror. But the law is the same when it is apparent, and Joel Kupperman, not yet of school age, giving answers to complicated mathematical problems, and the child Beethoven, composing a symphony, are both using the exact same intuitive grasp of universal law. Adela Rogers St. John, whose superb stories are read by millions, has a surefire method for creating her outstanding fiction. Quote, "My whole effort is to get myself out of the way and let something take over," she says. When something takes over, the story gets written in jig time and is far superior to anything I alone could do. Naturally, I'd rather have something do it. Happily, something usually does. End quote. Miss St. John is well aware of the limitless power for creation that flows through each of us. Every great artist and engineer, physicist, chemist, and astronomer, all who seek after creation and answers, must perforce have some contact with the universal subconscious mind. This contact comes when they get themselves out of the way and let the only mind in all creation provide them with the answers. The characteristics of this great mind become apparent under deep hypnosis. It acts as if it can make anything, without doubt, without wonder, without fear, without hesitation. Though hypnotic experiments have not yet gone so far, there is little doubt but what the subconscious mind can do exactly what it undertakes to do, for it knows everything, and everything exists within it, and its only movement is to change the arrangement or apparency of its own substance. The success of thought transference is increased many times under hypnosis. The intuitive grasp of universal law is increased many times under hypnosis. The hypnotized person can, with vastly increased effectiveness, read the thoughts of other minds and answer problems where he has no known understanding. Methods of reasoning. As science knows the reasoning methods of the mind of man, they generally come under two main classifications: inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Now, inductive reason means to reason from the particular to the general. For example, given an individual cat that can see at night, inductive reasoning sets out to prove that all cats can see at night. Deductive reasoning, on the other hand, given the premise that all cats can see at night, will arrive at the conclusion that a particular cat in a particular place at a particular time can see at night. In other words, inductive reason observes a specific occurrence and attempts to arrive at a general law to cover all such occurrences. Deductive reasoning is already in possession of the general law and simply uses this law to determine what may happen in specific circumstances in which the law is involved. It is apparent that inductive reasoning knows circumstance and seeks the law, while deductive reasoning knows the law and seeks the circumstance. The parallel can be seen immediately. Man knows circumstance and seeks the law. The universal subconscious mind knows the law and seeks the circumstance. The subconscious mind reasons only deductively. It cannot reason inductively because it already knows all law. It seeks only to determine circumstance from its complete knowledge of the law. This characteristic of the subconscious mind, that it reasons only deductively, that it therefore has in its possession the full knowledge of all governing law, is an indispensable proof that it is the infinite substance, God in man, the ultimate or absolute of all creation. And it is obvious that the individual's complete use of this mind will provide him with all the power of creation. The subconscious responds to suggestion alone. The great enlightening truth with which hypnosis has provided us is that this universal subconscious mind responds entirely to suggestion. In other words, this subconscious mind attempts to create in form and circumstance that which the conscious mind suggests to it. This subconscious mind does not direct man as an automaton, visit disaster and suffering upon him, govern his life. Indeed, it is the servant of man, and does exactly what man tells it to do. To illustrate this towering conception, let us go back to the young man who was cured of elephant hide through hypnosis. What did the hypnotist say to him? Your left arm is clearing up. That only. He did not enter into a series of whys and whereofs and ifs and buts. He simply said, your left arm is clearing up. Forthwith, the left arm cleared up. It is ridiculous in its simplicity. The young man himself could not say, my left arm is clearing up, and have an healing take place at all. Why? Because he was in complete rapport with himself, and when he said, my left arm is clearing up, he was simultaneously thinking, I've been this way all my life, and there's no hope. It is impossible to cure this hideous skin by simply saying words. I see this ugly skin before me, and it is there, and I know it. So what did his subconscious mind receive? It simply received the young man's conviction that he had an ugly skin which continued to manifest in reality. For the subconscious mind always acts, and it acts on those thoughts behind which there is the most conviction. Perhaps you're thinking that it would be a wonderful shortcut to simply put yourself in the hands of a qualified hypnotist and have him solve all the problems of your life by planting the proper suggestions in your subconscious mind. It is true that any immediate problem of yours might well be solved in this manner, but it is certain that you would not relish the necessity of running to the hypnotist every time you were faced with a problem for the rest of your life. No psychiatrist or hypnotist can live for you, and it is unlikely that you would want him to, even if he could. This is your life. You will live it to its fullest possibilities only when you are able to consciously exercise the great power that belongs to you. You cannot live by proxy, and live you must. The only answer is to arrive at understanding of the mighty forces of which you are a part this minute and of which you are a part forevermore. Hypnotism you can and may practice either as subject or practitioner, but you will make a grave error if you regard it as anything else than an experiment. It is only one small facet of the study of the universal mind, and its principal use to us at this moment is to show us beyond all doubt that the universal subconscious mind responds to suggestions alone. Meditation affirms suggestion. Thus, our primary tool in attaining all our desires is the use of meditation. In meditation, we are simply affirming certain suggestions to the subconscious mind. We are simply repeating and affirming certain thoughts with faith and conviction so that they will be acted upon by the infinite intelligence. It is true that our percentage of successes will be low at first, for even as we affirm, we deny. Even as you settle yourself for your daily meditation and affirm the good that is to come in your life, certain negative doubts ingrained in your thinking over the years will tend to project themselves into the subconscious and thus negate all your affirmation. The prompters themselves are difficult enough to overcome, and habits of negative thinking make the problem of successful meditation all the more difficult. While the hypnosis might cure you of a specific illness in several sessions, you yourself, undertaking the same cure, may find that it takes you several months or even a year. But don't be misled into seeking solution through hypnotism unless your problem is so acute and time of such essence as to forbid any other procedure. For only by solving your own problem, only by attaining control and understanding of your own power will you be truly master of your own life. Even as chronic illness keeps you running to doctor after doctor, so will the solving of your problems by hypnotism keep you running to hypnotist after hypnotists. Now, this fact we must make very clear. If your appendix is ruptured or your leg broken, the person for you to see is a doctor. If an acute neurosis is leading you into intense melancholia or displacement of personality, or any psychotic behavior that may be dangerous to yourself or society, the person for you to see is a psychiatrist. When a physical event or circumstance has reached its acute stage and the life of welfare of the individual is seriously threatened, the event or circumstance must be dealt with on the physical plane. Doctors and psychiatrists will play an important role in human welfare for many years to come. But the day will arrive when mankind understands that all physical circumstance originates on the plane of thought. And that day, each person will stand individual sentinel against all disease and all emotional suffering, and they will disappear from our world. Ultimate reality. Our conscious minds, these instruments of ours which classify and analyze pain and pleasure and have their seats in our brains, tend to play a very disconcerting trick on us. Since the conscious mind functions altogether for the purpose of survival of the individual, it does all in its power to measure and weigh and classify everything with which it comes in contact. Through the sheer variety and exactness with which it performs these classifications, it tends to convince us of the final reality of the physical world about us. For example, if we say in all truth that the chair on which you are now sitting is composed of sheer energy, which is in a constant state of movement, the conscious mind says, "No, I feel it, and it is hard. It has a certain shape and color, and it is real. I can leave it today, and it will be here when I return tomorrow. It cannot move by itself, for only I or someone who is capable of moving can move it. It is not alive. It is inanimate. It is a chair, and I know what a chair is." This is a typical example of the reasoning of the conscious mind, but to consider it final reality is a bleak prospect indeed. This is not to propose that you ignore the chair and attempt to walk through it, for you are likely to wind up with a nasty fall. This is only to state that the physical objects and circumstance of our world cannot be final reality. If they are, then this life is all there is, and each human being is a poor thing buffeted around by a mad and ironic fate. And this consciousness of yours that is such an astounding thing is nothing but an accident. The great plan and design of the universe could not possibly permit such an appalling accident. You, your consciousness, must fit into this design just as all other things fit. And the detail and purpose of all life is of such wonder and complexity that there could be nothing else behind it. All then, an intelligence of infinite scope and power. You live in this intelligence. You have your very being there. This intelligence is the only mind there is. It responds to us as we recognize it, and it responds entirely by suggestion. What a towering, wondrous world! We may call upon the power of all creation simply through thought and conviction. Nothing is impossible to man, for the intelligence in which he lives gives him anything he can visualize and have faith in. So let us not allow our conscious minds to trick us into believing that the physical world is the ultimate reality. Let us go through our days following the dictates of the conscious mind in the physical world, for this pain-pleasure discerner of ours is a finely made machine for coping with the physical. But let us constantly reach outward for the infinite intelligence that is ours. Let us know that all forms and circumstance must first originate on the plane of thought, that the first cause of all creation is simply thought and conviction. Let us know that we can contact the universal mind for the answers to all our problems, that we create all of our circumstances by giving birth to them in our minds, that nothing in all the universe can stop our thoughts from becoming real in our experience, for that is the law of life and of living. First cause is mental. You are immortal. Not your body, not your conscious mind, but the real you, the part of you which exists forever in the universal subconscious mind. You always have been. You always will be. You are inseparable one with everything that is, each human being in this world, all life, all form, all objects. One, just one, and everything answers thought and faith. Later we shall undertake to show the origination of all form and circumstances in our physical world. We shall undertake to show the beginning of the universe and to explain the basic process and reason behind evolution. In the meantime, it is important for you to realize that the first cause of all circumstance in your life is thought. All things and all circumstances must first be created on the mental plane. When such creation is clear-cut and born of faith and conviction, nothing can stop this image from becoming real. Once this image has come into your mind and you have accepted it, you have done all that it is necessary for you to do. All the process of creation, time, place, and circumstance must be left in the hands of the all-knowing subconscious mind. The physical circumstance you desire may come from a direction you expect, or it may come in such a way and such a manner as you have never dreamed. Don't strain or urge or become impatient. Simply have faith and let go. Remember, Whatever you observe closely causes you to entertain an element of doubt. You have nothing to do but create the mental image with complete faith. And with that simple act, the process is completely done. Be assured that the image will become real in your physical world, for you are dealing with law and law alone. Review. Here then are the principal points covered in this chapter. 1. The conscious mind is an instrument for the recording of pain and pleasure. It measures experiences of pain and pleasure, files them for recall, analyzes the experiences that produce them, and imagines escape from pain and flight into pleasure. Thus, the compartments of the conscious mind: memory, reason, and imagination. 2. The conscious mind is a finely tuned instrument with the sole aim of physical survival of the organism. 3. The conscious mind is as destructible as the body of which it is a part. 4. The conscious mind has no memory of its own, but simply a certain ability of recall. 5. The memory of the subconscious mind is perfect. 6. The subconscious mind is the infinite substance of which all things are made. It has no beginning and no end, and everything exists within it. 7. The subconscious mind is everything and knows everything. It is everywhere at all times, and all of it is anywhere at any particular time, for space and time cannot exist in infinity. 8. Inductive reasoning attempts to arrive at law through observing particular circumstance, and is the type of reasoning primarily done by the conscious mind of man. 9. Deductive reasoning attempts to arrive at particular circumstance through the knowledge of law, and is the type of reasoning always done by the subconscious mind. 10. Hypnotism exposes the essence of the subconscious mind and allows us to see that it responds entirely by suggestion. 11. We cannot order our lives through hypnotism, but only through consciously exercising our control over the subconscious mind, which simply means consciously exercising control over our thoughts. 12. Meditation is the tool with which we seek to control our thoughts and thus to control our world through the subconscious mind. 13. Thought transference is a proof that all of life exists within the one mind of all creation, the universal subconscious mind. 14. Intuition is a proof that the universal subconscious mind contains the knowledge of the law and will reveal it to the conscious mind of man when a proper rapport is established. 15. The subconscious mind has the power to heal the body, to create physical form and physical circumstance, but acute ill health must still be dealt with by the doctor, and acute mental distress must still be dealt with by the psychiatrist, for we have not come far enough in our faith and our conception to be able to remove all cause and effect from the plane of the purely physical. 16. The first cause of every object and circumstance is its creation on the plane of the mind. The magnificent aspiration. Gradually, the barriers in your thinking dissolve before the weight of a greater conception. Gradually, your mind turns from its concern with circumstance toward a beginning grasp of a greater and more towering reality than you have ever dreamed. Think in terms of complete unity. You are one with every person who lives, ever has lived, and ever will live. You are one with every form of life that exists, every inanimate object of your world. For all things are made from one thing, and thus all things are one thing. And objects and circumstances exist as the result of conception and desire being projected into the infinite creative substance of which we are all a part, in which we are all one. Thought is the only mover. According to the degree of your conscious intelligence, you will grasp the power that is yours. According to your conscious intelligence, you will project images into the subconscious mind which are great or small. Thus there will be returned to you only those circumstances of which you are capable of conceiving, but whatever you conceive will be returned to you, and if doubt and fear predominate your thinking, those very things that you fear will be visited upon you, for they are convictions that the subconscious mind must create into actuality. We can't escape living in the subconscious mind, and we can't escape thinking, and we can't escape having our thoughts manifest themselves in our physical world. But we can control our thoughts. We can control our thoughts, and thus we can control our destinies, and we can become as great and as powerful as we can conceive of being. For there is at our disposal the unlimited power of all creation. The meditation that follows is aimed at creating harmony and effectiveness in your daily life. No matter what your work is, out of the home, in the home, manual, mental, employee, employer, you can create and attract circumstance and harmony so as to make each day full of achievement and satisfaction. Remember that meditation is the tool with which we work. It is our way of giving suggestion to the subconscious mind. You must not fail to engage in your meditation period daily. Only through the constant use of this great tool can you achieve control over your circumstance and your destiny. You will succeed, for you cannot fail. You are dealing with life force, are a part of life force, and power through self-realization is the destiny of man. Recommended reading: The Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science by Thomas Troward, published by Robert McBride. Third meditation. I know and recognize my oneness with all things. I know that all form and all circumstance are the creation of an infinite intelligence that is in and around me. I know that all things are the result of conception and desire, that my world is ordered according to my own thoughts and convictions. Therefore, I concentrate on harmony. I see nothing but order and constructiveness all about me. I do not accept thoughts of destructiveness and disharmony. In my friends, my loved ones, my fellow workers, I see nothing but cooperation and assistance. I know that we all seek the same answers and the same goals. I know that each person must follow a different path toward his vision, and I understand the searchings and the copings of everyone I know and see. I have sympathy and tolerance for all things and all people. I know that inasmuch as I help others, I help myself. In my brother's eye, there is my own soul. In my friend's smile, there is my own humor. In my neighbor's sorrow, there's my own loss. I have compassion and understanding for all things, for this life in which I have my being strives for understanding of itself. I deny error. It is simply progress toward truth. I know that it is impossible to fail when faith is present. I do not order things to be made in my time or in my place, but trust the universal mind in its own great knowledge of the time and the place and the need and the way. Each moment of each day brings my life closer to realization. The objects of my work are being accomplished this very minute. Success and harmony, peace and confidence are mine. End of chapter 3. If you haven't done so, please do hit that like button and share this with your friends. Head over to the next video where I will be there with chapter 4.